Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the hushed world of medieval monasteries, where the air smells faintly of parchment, candle wax, and a hint of, well, probably old cheese. You find yourself trudging through narrow stone corridors, the only light coming from flickering candles, casting dancing shadows on cold walls. Somewhere nearby, a monk is bent over a desk, meticulously copying words by hand, their quill scratching softly in the stillness. You probably won't survive a day in this scriptorium. Imagine hours of intense focus, with nothing but silence and your own thoughts for company. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's joining me on these late-night journeys. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the scriptorium, the monk's quiet workshop for copying texts. The room is simple but purposeful. Long wooden tables stretch under low beams, each workstation occupied by a lone figure bent over a sheet of parchment. The faint scent of aged vellum mingles with the subtle smokiness of beeswax candles. Flickering shadows dance on stone walls, making everything feel like it's caught in a slow-moving, golden twilight. It's a space dedicated to patient craft, where time seems to stretch and condense at once. The task at hand is monumental: to transcribe sacred texts and classical knowledge by hand, one painstaking letter at a time. This was before the printing press revolutionized book production, so every manuscript carried immense value. You might imagine the pressure resting on each monk's shoulders, not just to copy words correctly, but to create something worthy of reverence. The monks work in near silence, save for the gentle scratching of quills on parchment. No music, no chatter, just the focused rhythm of ink meeting skin. They use quills made from bird feathers, often goose or swan, sharpened to a fine point and dipped repeatedly into ink pots. The ink itself is a mysterious brew of soot, gum, and water, sometimes mixed with iron salts to give it a rich, dark hue. Parchment, made from animal skins, is prepared with great care to provide a smooth surface, tough enough to endure the rigors of daily use. This meticulous process demands intense concentration and patience. It's easy to imagine your eyes tiring under dim candlelight, struggling to discern tiny letters, while your fingers cramp from the repetitive motions. Monks didn't have the luxury of adjustable lamps or ergonomic chairs, just hard wooden benches and the cold stone floor beneath. Oddly enough, some monks brought a touch of whimsy to their work. While the main text was serious business, the margins occasionally reveal hidden treasures, tiny illustrations of mischievous animals, caricatures of fellow monks, or playful scenes. These marginalia might have been a quiet rebellion against the tedium, or simply moments of lightheartedness in a demanding routine. Historians still debate whether these doodles were allowed or frowned upon, but their existence reminds us monks were human after all, with a sense of humor and a touch of creativity. The scriptorium wasn't merely about copying. It was a hub of cultural preservation. Monks safeguarded ancient knowledge, religious texts, classical philosophy, medical recipes, even early scientific observations. Through their efforts, much of the wisdom of antiquity survived the upheavals of the medieval period. The daily routine in the scriptorium was rigorous. Monks balanced their hours between prayer, study, work, and rest. The sacred and the scholarly intertwined, each stroke of the quill an act of devotion. Silence was sacred, yet necessary. Interruptions were few, for focus was paramount. Working by candlelight brought its own challenges. Candles flickered and sputtered, vulnerable to drafts or the monk's own breath. The warm, dancing light illuminated only small patches of parchment, forcing eyes to adjust constantly. Eye strain and headaches were common companions, but the monks persevered. You might wonder why anyone would choose such a demanding life. The answer lies partly in faith, partly in a profound commitment to knowledge. Monks believed their work was a service to God and humanity, a way to keep light alive in a dark world. The quiet scriptorium was their sanctuary, a place where time slowed and the past whispered through every carefully copied letter. So, as you imagine yourself here, in this candlelit room of silent diligence, you're not just witnessing history. You're stepping into the rhythm of centuries-old devotion, the scratch of quills echoing a timeless song of patience and care. You barely lift your head from the wooden desk, eyes tracing the curve of a single letter as your quill dances delicately across the parchment. This section of the monastery's work is a study in simplicity and precision, the tools of the trade. You might think it's all about fancy inks or exotic paints, but at its heart, manuscript creation depends on humble materials: quills, ink, and parchment. The quill, often taken from a goose feather, is carefully trimmed and sharpened to create a fine tip, perfect for forming letters that could be read by scholars and clergy alike. You dip it repeatedly into an inkpot filled with a dark, viscous ink, a mixture often made from soot, oak galls, and gum arabic. Each dip feeds your pen for a few words, forcing a steady, rhythmic pace to your writing. Drop too much ink, and you risk blotting the precious parchment. Too little, and your letters will fade or break. Parchment itself is a remarkable product, crafted painstakingly from animal skins, most commonly sheep, goats, or calves. The skins undergo soaking, scraping, and stretching until they're smooth and firm, providing a perfect surface to catch ink without bleeding. It's expensive and fragile, a far cry from the cheap paper we toss away so easily today. Interestingly, the preparation of these materials was an art in itself. The parchment's texture could vary, affecting how the ink settled and the quills glide. You might run your fingers across a manuscript and feel subtle ridges or fine imperfections, reminders that every page is uniquely handcrafted. Monks sometimes even used special treatments to make the parchment more receptive to ink or to prevent fading. Ink recipes varied across regions and periods. Some monks swore by iron gall ink for its durability, while others preferred carbon-based inks that offered richer blacks but faded faster. You'd think such minor details wouldn't matter, but historians still argue how the choice of materials affected the longevity and appearance of manuscripts centuries later. Quills had their quirks too. They had to be regularly resharpened and replaced, which could slow the work or frustrate scribes. A broken quill could mean smudges or missing letters, a costly error. In fact, some monks became skilled quill makers themselves, ensuring their writing instruments were always in prime condition. Imagine the sensory experience, the faint scratch of the quill tip meeting vellum, the smell of ink and parchment mingling, the feel of fine dust from scraping mistakes away. Yes, scraping. Another story altogether. When errors happened, monks used a knife to carefully scrape away the ink without damaging the page. A delicate fix requiring a steady hand and patience. More than once, a hurried scribe's mistake turned into a frantic exercise in scraping and rewriting. Not all scribes were equally skilled, though. Some letters might wobble, others fade inconsistently, and occasionally you'd find a curious flourish or unique letter form betraying the personality of its maker. This has led some scholars to argue whether monks were mere copyists or artists, adding their own subtle touch to the texts. And here's a little medieval twist for you. The very ink monks used sometimes had unexpected effects. For instance, iron gall ink, while durable, was acidic and could slowly eat through parchment over centuries, leaving manuscripts fragile and patchy today. Some manuscripts appear to be self-destructing, a poetic, if unintended reminder of their age. The quiet, repetitive nature of this work might seem mind-numbing, but the careful preparation and use of these simple tools were vital to the survival of knowledge. Without the painstaking craft of quill, ink, and parchment, many classical texts and religious manuscripts would have been lost to time. Sometimes the monks had to improvise with their tools. When quills were scarce, feathers from other birds like swans, crows, or even ravens might be employed, each requiring different handling and sharpening techniques. The color and thickness of ink could be subtly adjusted depending on the type of text or decoration planned. For example, headings might be inked in deep black, while annotations could be in a reddish-brown. The process of making ink was almost alchemical, requiring specific ingredients and careful preparation. The oak galls used, those strange hard growths on oak trees caused by wasp larvae, were soaked and crushed to release tannins that reacted with iron salts to create the distinctive iron gall ink. Monks sometimes guarded their ink recipes as closely as any treasure, knowing a good ink meant clear, lasting text. Preparing parchment was a labor-intensive task often done outside the scriptorium, but its quality was critical. Skins were soaked in lime water to loosen hair and flesh, then scraped with special knives called lanellum. Once cleaned and stretched on frames, the parchment was dried slowly to avoid warping. The final sheets could be polished with pumice stone to smooth the surface further, giving a subtle sheen and better ink absorption. Because parchment was expensive, mistakes were costly. Scraping away errors required delicate skill to avoid tearing the surface. Some errors were corrected by carefully writing over faint lines, while others were hidden under painted decorations or illuminated initials. The margins sometimes became a playground for creative fixes or notes to future readers. The monks' craftsmanship extended beyond writing. They prepared their own brushes for adding color and gold leaf to manuscripts. These paints were made from natural minerals and plants, ground into fine powders, and mixed with binders like egg white or gum arabic. Gold leaf, hammered into sheets thinner than paper, was applied using a sticky substance called gesso to make the pages literally glow. The sheer dedication involved can be staggering. Imagine spending months on a single book, with some larger manuscripts taking years to complete. Yet the work wasn't purely laborious. It was also a spiritual exercise. Many monks viewed their calligraphy as a form of prayer, each letter a devotion, each illuminated page a hymn in color and gold. Despite all this, not every scriptorium was equally well equipped. Some remote monasteries had limited resources, forcing monks to be inventive with what they had. They recycled older manuscripts by scraping the ink off, a process called palimpsesting, to reuse the costly parchment. These palimpsests have since become treasures for modern scholars, revealing layers of lost texts beneath visible writing. Historians still debate the extent to which individual scribes influenced the manuscripts they copied. Were they anonymous workers faithfully reproducing texts, or did they imprint personal styles and choices onto their work? Some evidence points to a blend. While religious humility discouraged overt personal expression, subtle flourishes and marginal sketches suggest personality peeked through. As you imagine yourself here, quill in hand, dipping, scratching, pausing, you're touching the heartbeat of a lost world. The tools of trade, simple feathers, soot, and animal skins, became instruments of preservation, art, and devotion. Through their steady work, monks kept the flame of knowledge alive, one letter at a time. As your eyes adjust to the dim glow of candlelight, you become acutely aware of how that flickering flame shapes the very atmosphere of the scriptorium. Working after dark isn't just about pushing through the fading daylight. It's a sensory experience defined by the soft, trembling light and the delicate shadows that seem to move and breathe with every flicker. The monks depend on candles, usually made from beeswax, for illumination. Their warm glow, the only barrier against the overwhelming darkness that surrounds the monastery's thick stone walls. You imagine the scene: small, thick candles set in simple iron holders, placed strategically to cast light where it's needed most. The monks position their desks near windows when possible, hoping to catch any lingering daylight. But as evening falls, it's these candles that keep the work going. However, the light they provide is both a gift and a challenge. Candle flames are notoriously fickle, dancing wildly with the slightest draft or breath. One misplaced gust can send shadows spinning or plunge a page into near darkness, making it harder to see those tiny, precise letters. Not only that, but the flickering candlelight creates an ever-shifting play of light and shadow on the parchment, forcing monks' eyes to constantly readjust. You can almost feel the strain in their gaze as they wrestle with these changing conditions, struggling to maintain the steady hands required for their delicate task. Historians still argue whether the eye strain and headaches common among scribes affected the speed or quality of their work, or whether monks developed special techniques to compensate. The candle smoke adds another layer to this sensory world. Beeswax candles burn cleaner than tallow alternatives, but still produce a gentle haze. Over long hours, the air thickens with subtle soot, clinging to the parchments and sometimes leaving faint, dark smudges on delicate pages. The monks might have noticed this, but accepted it as part of their routine. After all, their mission, to preserve knowledge and faith, outweighed minor inconveniences like smoky air or dim lighting. Working after dark by candlelight also had its risks. There's a quiet tension in knowing that open flames near stacks of dry parchment and wooden furniture could spark disastrous fires. Some monasteries had strict rules about candle use, mandating that candles be kept low and never left unattended. You can picture a monk nervously glancing around, making sure no stray flame threatens his precious work. Despite these challenges, candlelight gave the scriptorium a unique kind of magic. The warm, golden hues seemed to transform ordinary letters into glowing symbols, lending the manuscripts an almost sacred aura. This was not just about seeing, but feeling, the flickering light connecting the scribes spiritually to the divine task at hand. Some monks might have considered their candlelit work a form of meditation, the soft glow guiding their hands and hearts alike. There's also an intriguing theory among scholars that the flickering candlelight influenced the style of the scripts themselves. The slight variations in visibility and shadow might have encouraged more flowing, rounded letter forms that were easier to discern in low light. Others argue that some of the elaborate flourishes and decorative strokes in manuscripts were inspired by the dancing shadows, creating a visual rhythm between text and light. The ambiance of the scriptorium at night would have been both calming and intense. You hear the soft scratching of quills, the occasional whisper of a page turning, and the subtle crackle of candle flames. Every sound seems amplified in the stillness, drawing your attention inward, focusing your mind on the painstaking work. It's a world apart from the noisy medieval streets or the bustling chapel services, a place where time stretches and quietude reigns. It's easy to romanticize this environment, but working by candlelight wasn't always serene. The monks' bodies grew tired, their eyes weary, and their backs stiff from hours spent hunched over desks. Yet the candlelight was a necessary companion, pushing them through long nights of labor. Some monasteries tried to improve conditions by installing small glass windows or using multiple candles to increase brightness. But the limitations of the era persisted. One peculiar detail you might enjoy: some monks used mirrors or polished metal plates placed behind candles to reflect and amplify the light onto their workspaces. This early form of lighting innovation aimed to reduce eye strain and improve visibility, though the effectiveness likely varied. As the night deepened, the scriptorium's atmosphere would have grown quieter still. The monks' breathing slowed, their movements softened, and the flickering candles cast long, peaceful shadows on the walls. You might find yourself lulled by the gentle glow, your thoughts drifting as the world outside fades away. So, the next time you light a candle to set a calm mood, remember the countless monks who worked by its flickering light, preserving knowledge, creating art, and bringing the wisdom of the past to the future. One glowing page at a time, you notice that the pages in front of you aren't just plain text, but come alive with shimmering colors and glimmers of gold. This is the art of illumination, a magical process that transforms humble manuscripts into breathtaking treasures. Monks weren't merely copyists. Many were skilled artists who meticulously added vibrant decorations and gilded details to enliven the pages and honor the sacredness of the texts they painstakingly preserved. Illumination begins long before the brush touches the parchment. After the text was copied, monks carefully planned the layout for the decorations, often sketching delicate designs in faint ink or pencil. These designs ranged from simple decorative borders, flowing vines or geometric patterns, to elaborate initials that sprawled across entire pages. Sometimes the margins were filled with whimsical creatures, intricate knotwork, or miniature scenes illustrating biblical stories or daily medieval life. The goal wasn't only to beautify, but to engage the reader's eye and spirit, making reading a devotional and contemplative experience. The colors used in these illuminations came from natural sources, some harvested from distant lands, and all painstakingly prepared. Reds were extracted from crushed insects like the cochineal or madder root, while the deep blues often came from lapis lazuli, a precious stone mined primarily in Afghanistan, transported along dangerous trade routes all the way to European monasteries. Greens came from plants such as verdigris, and yellows from saffron or orpiment. These pigments were ground into fine powders and mixed with binders like egg whites, known as glaire, or gum arabic, to create vibrant, lasting paints. Remarkably, some pigments, especially lapis lazuli, were more valuable than gold, making illuminated manuscripts not just spiritual, but financial treasures. The crowning glory of illumination was the application of gold leaf. Thin sheets of gold, hammered until nearly translucent, they're carefully laid onto pages to create dazzling highlights. Monks would first apply a sticky base, called gesso or bowl, often made of gypsum or clay mixed with glue. This base ensured the gold adhered smoothly and allowed it to be polished to a brilliant shine. The effect was almost otherworldly. When candlelight touched these gilded areas, the pages seemed to glow from within, creating a physical manifestation of divine light. Gold wasn't merely decorative. It symbolized the presence and glory of God. Applying gold leaf was a delicate, painstaking process. The sheets were so thin, they could easily tear, and once placed, any mistake could ruin hours of careful preparation. Monks perfected the technique through years of practice, learning how to handle the fragile metal with gentle brushes and specialized tools. After application, the gold was often burnished with smooth stones or teeth to enhance its reflective quality. This shimmer brought life and spiritual significance to the manuscripts, lifting them beyond mere books to sacred artifacts. Illumination styles were diverse, reflecting different regions, periods, and artistic traditions. Celtic manuscripts, like the famed Book of Kells, showcased intricate interlacing knots and fantastical creatures, while Carolingian manuscripts embraced classical motifs with balanced, harmonious compositions. Byzantine manuscripts often featured rich iconography and lavish use of gold backgrounds, emphasizing spiritual symbolism. Each style reveals the unique cultural and theological influences shaping monastic art, turning every manuscript into a distinctive piece of heritage. There was also a layer of symbolism woven throughout illuminated manuscripts, often subtle or encoded. Certain flowers symbolized virtues like purity or humility. Colors could represent theological concepts, red for martyrdom or passion, blue for heaven and truth. Animals held metaphorical meanings too: lions for courage, owls for wisdom, dragons for evil or protection. Scholars still debate the full meanings behind many motifs, as some symbolism has been lost to time or remained intentionally obscure, accessible only to the initiated few. Beyond aesthetics, illumination served practical purposes. Large decorated initials marked the start of chapters or important passages, helping readers navigate complex texts. Borders sometimes contained mnemonic devices, aiding memorization in an era when books were precious and literacy limited. In some cases, illuminations illustrated narratives or theological concepts, functioning as visual sermons to complement the written word. The spiritual dimension of illumination was profound. Many monks saw the act of beautifying sacred texts as a form of prayer, a devotional labor offering honor to God. Each painted page became a hymn in color and light, a testament to faith expressed through artistic skill. This belief imbued the work with meaning beyond mere decoration, linking craft and worship inextricably. You can almost feel the reverence in the scriptorium as monks carefully apply gold leaf and vibrant paints, their brushes moving slowly under the watchful glow of candlelight. The transformation from blank parchment to a glowing, colorful page is nothing short of miraculous, a blend of faith, artistry, and human patience. Imagine the quiet focus, the hours of steady handwork, and the deep satisfaction of seeing a page come alive with color and light. Yet the process wasn't always smooth. Resources were limited, and some monasteries struggled to obtain costly pigments like lapis lazuli. This scarcity led to inventive solutions, using cheaper or locally available materials, or reserving the most expensive pigments for the most important manuscripts. Some monasteries recycled scraps of gold from older, damaged books, or applied gold sparingly. Despite the sacred purpose, illuminated manuscripts could also reveal surprising moments of humor or earthly concerns. Marginalia sometimes contained playful or even irreverent images. Monks depicted as animals, strange creatures or scenes of medieval daily life. These whimsical touches remind us that even in the solemn act of manuscript production, human nature found ways to express itself. The dedication to illumination reflected broader medieval values, reverence for tradition, the integration of art and faith, and the preservation of knowledge. These manuscripts were treasures, often kept under lock and key, handled with utmost care. Their creation was an investment in cultural continuity, a gift to future generations. Through centuries, the legacy of illuminated manuscripts has endured. Their artistic innovations influenced later Renaissance painters, and their decorative elements inspired early printed books. Even today, calligraphers and artists draw upon medieval illumination techniques and motifs, bridging past and present. As you sit quietly, imagining the flickering candlelight highlighting gilded pages, remember that each brushstroke and gold leaf application was an act of faith and artistry, a patient labor of love in a world far removed from our fast-paced modern lives. In this soft glow, time seems to slow, and the sacred texts whisper stories not only through words, but through light and color, an eternal testament to human devotion and creativity. You settle deeper into the ambient silence of the scriptorium, and the sounds around you begin to unfold like a subtle symphony. The room is not perfectly silent. Rather, it is alive with quiet noises, the gentle scratching of quills across parchment, the soft rustling of vellum as pages turn, and the occasional sigh or whispered breath of concentration. These are the scriptorium sounds, the ambient soundtrack of medieval manuscript creation. Each scratch of the quill punctuates the air with a delicate rhythm, a tactile connection between mind, hand, and material. It's a sound both precise and soothing, like the soft tapping of raindrops on a window pane. You notice that while the noise is minimal, it fills the space enough to prevent the oppressive stillness that might otherwise weigh down the monk's focus. Beyond the quill, the scriptorium is punctuated by other gentle sounds. Occasionally, a monk clears his throat quietly, or a page is carefully turned with a subtle whisper of vellum. If a candle flickers or sputters, it adds a brief, almost musical hiss to the mix. Even footsteps, muffled on stone floors, create a faint echo that reminds you of the monastery's vast, echoing halls beyond the scriptorium walls. Interestingly, the silence itself was a carefully maintained rule. Distractions were minimized to preserve concentration and spiritual contemplation. The monks adhered to strict rules of quietude, speaking only when absolutely necessary. You might imagine the occasional hushed exchange, a brief question about a tricky Latin phrase, or a reminder to sharpen a quill. But these moments were rare and respectful. There were times, however, when unexpected sounds intruded upon the quiet. Perhaps a mouse scurrying behind a bookshelf, or a distant bell tolling the hour. These interruptions, small as they might be, reminded monks of the world beyond their chamber, and served as brief mental breaks. Some scribes believed that such sounds helped prevent the mind from becoming too fatigued, allowing their hands to rest momentarily before returning to work. Historians still debate how much the scriptorium's acoustics influenced the monks' productivity and well-being. Some argue that the steady, low-level noise was essential to maintaining focus, while others suggest monks developed techniques to tune out distractions entirely, entering a kind of meditative trance during their work. The scriptorium's sounds also had social dimensions. The soft, rhythmic noise of copying communicated a shared commitment among monks. In a way, the room's quiet hum was a collective heartbeat, a reminder that each individual's labor contributed to a communal goal, preserving knowledge and faith for generations to come. Imagine now that you lean in closer, feeling the slight vibrations of quills scratching, the subtle creak of wooden benches, and the faint brush of parchment pages turning. These sounds form an intimate acoustic environment, fostering calm and concentration. There's a curious tradition among some medieval monasteries to mark errors or corrections audibly. A monk might lightly tap his quill against the desk to signal a mistake or call a nearby brother's attention. These discreet signals ensured the flow of work remained uninterrupted but accurate. You can picture a silent conversation conducted through a series of scratches, taps, and glances. The ambient noises extended beyond the scriptorium too. Occasionally you might hear the distant choir singing their vesper prayers, the clatter of dinnerware in the refectory, or the soft murmur of monks walking to their evening prayers. These background sounds framed the scriptorium's quiet labor within the broader rhythms of monastic life. Despite the demanding silence, monks sometimes expressed their personalities through sound in subtle ways. Some developed distinctive penmanship styles, recognizable to their peers by the specific cadence of their quill strokes. Others might hum quietly, though this was generally discouraged, or whisper prayers under their breath as they worked. If you listen carefully, you might imagine the scriptorium's soundscape as a form of early ASMR, a soothing, repetitive chorus of gentle noises that calms the mind and encourages deep focus. It's a world away from modern noise pollution, offering a sense of peace and timeless rhythm. So, as you close your eyes and settle into this acoustic tapestry, remember that the scriptorium's sounds were more than just incidental noise. They were part of a lived experience, a gentle, shared soundtrack accompanying the slow, sacred act of preserving wisdom and faith through the written word. You start to feel the pulse of monastic life, the steady rhythm that shapes every moment in the monastery. This rhythm is a carefully crafted balance of prayer, work, and rest, woven into the fabric of each day. In the scriptorium, this balance dictates the pace of manuscript creation and the mindset of those who devote their lives to it. The day begins before dawn, long before the sun stretches its first golden fingers across the horizon. You awaken from your simple cot in the monastery cell, the chill of stone walls greeting you. Soon, the sound of bells calls the community to gather for the divine office, a series of set prayers marking the hours. You join your fellow monks in chanting psalms, your voices rising and falling in solemn harmony, grounding you spiritually and marking the passage of sacred time. Prayer is the foundation of the day. It is more than ritual. It is the lens through which every action is seen and sanctified. After the morning prayers, you move quietly toward the scriptorium, a place where sacred duty and scholarly labor unite. Here, work begins, copying sacred texts, illuminating pages, or reading and studying. The day is divided into sessions, each marked by prayer or communal meals. Morning work is followed by midday prayers. Then a modest meal taken in silence or soft conversation. In the afternoon, you return to the scriptorium, focusing intently until the evening prayers call you once more. After Vespers, some retreat to their cells for rest, reading, or further study, while others might engage in manual labor, tending gardens, repairing buildings, or preparing food. His strict daily schedule is prescribed by monastic rules, such as the rule of Saint Benedict, which guides not just spiritual practices, but the practical organization of time. The rule emphasizes balance, ora et labora, pray and work, a motto embodying the monastery's philosophy. Time is segmented into sacred moments, ensuring that neither prayer nor work overwhelms the other. The routine's steadiness is both a comfort and a discipline. Each monk submits to the communal rhythm, finding meaning in the repetition. The slow, deliberate pace fosters a contemplative mindset, allowing hands and hearts to unite in devotion. The act of copying texts is transformed from tedious labor into prayer in motion, each letter a whispered hymn. Physical labor balances intellectual toil. Gardens flourish under the monk's care. Food is prepared with humility, and the monastery's fabric is maintained by collective effort. These tasks nurture the body and community, preventing the isolation that could arise from endless hours at the writing desk. Historians still debate how strictly these schedules were observed. While the rule offers clear guidance, real-life practice varied. Some monks might have extended work hours during important projects. Others took more time for meditation or study. Individual temperament and the monastery's resources influenced daily life. In the scriptorium, the work is often divided by skill and seniority. Senior scribes oversee novices, guiding their progress and ensuring quality. Large manuscripts might be divided among several monks, each contributing pages or sections. This collaboration reinforces a sense of shared purpose and mutual support. You sense the rhythm as you work, dipping your quill, forming letters, pausing to consult a text, or sharpen your pen. The repetition soothes, yet demands endurance and focus. Some monks recite prayers silently to maintain mental discipline. Others meditate on the words they write, linking faith and craft intimately. Rest is woven into this tapestry. Sleep, meals, and moments of quiet reflection replenish body and mind. Even in the demanding scriptorium, monks value balance, understanding that sustained labor requires periodic respite. This monastic rhythm shapes medieval concepts of time. Unlike our modern clock-driven life, time here is cyclical, marked by prayer and communal activity. The pace resists chaos, sanctifying every moment through structured routine. Imagine yourself rising before dawn. Pause. Joining the choir's chant. Pause. Settling at your desk as candles are lit. Pause. Working steadily until evening prayers signal the day's end. Each phase flows naturally into the next. Pause. A gentle but purposeful cycle. In this rhythm, the scriptorium becomes a sanctuary, a place where discipline, faith, and community converge. Your role as a monk and scribe is to embody this balance. Pause, contributing your hand to a legacy of knowledge and devotion. So, as you rest in this slow cadence, feel the harmony of prayer and work guiding your hands and heart, a timeless rhythm echoing through history's halls. You're deeply engrossed in the rhythmic dance of pen and parchment when, inevitably, a slip occurs. Perhaps the quill glides too fast, a drop of ink pools unexpectedly, or your hand falters just for a moment, introducing a flaw in an otherwise flawless manuscript. Mistakes were a natural part of the scriptorium's life, and the monks developed ingenious and delicate methods to correct them, ensuring that these precious documents retained their sanctity and beauty. The primary tool for fixing errors was the penknife, a small, crescent-shaped blade specially designed to scrape ink from the surface of the parchment. Imagine the intense concentration required. You carefully glide the blade over the dried ink, gently shaving off the top layer of parchment along with the erroneous mark. Too heavy a hand, and you risk gouging a hole or weakening the delicate page. Too light, and the error remains visible, distracting from the text's perfection. This process demanded patience, precision, and a steady hand, with monks sometimes spending minutes just removing a single letter. But this was no mere erasure. Scraping away ink altered the surface texture, leaving faint scars or thin spots that revealed the manuscript's history and the human effort behind its creation. Sometimes, you could see layers upon layers of corrections, scribes repeatedly refining their work to achieve as close to perfection as possible. When scraping wasn't sufficient, scribes sometimes added small patches of vellum to reinforce weakened areas or cover up holes caused by excessive scraping. These patches were glued carefully beneath the surface, and corrections could be written over them, ensuring the manuscript's integrity. Imagine the patience and skill needed to blend these repairs seamlessly into the page's fabric. Errors also invited a more playful response in the form of marginalia, whimsical drawings, humorous sketches, or little notes scribbled in the margins beside the text. These illustrations ranged from fanciful animals and grotesques to caricatures of monks or scenes from daily life. They were the medieval equivalent of doodles, tiny windows into the personalities and moods of monks laboring in silence. Sometimes, they even poked gentle fun at the painstaking process itself. You might be amused to discover that some manuscripts feature what scholars call correction monsters, cartoonish creatures or dragons drawn next to mistakes, perhaps to mark them with a touch of humor or to draw attention for future readers. Were these scribes rebelling in a subtle way against the demands of perfection? Or were they simply lightening the heavy atmosphere with a dash of creativity? Historians still debate these questions, and each doodle adds mystery and charm to these ancient texts. Corrections and marginalia were often a communal affair. Senior monks or abbots would review a scribe's work, marking errors for correction and guiding novices through the process. This mentorship ensured manuscripts met the high standards expected in the monastery and offered opportunities for learning and improvement. The stakes were high. A simple miswritten word in a religious manuscript could alter meaning, leading to theological confusion or misinterpretation. This awareness of the spiritual weight behind every letter made scribes especially vigilant, balancing humility with a deep sense of responsibility. Besides textual errors, scribes faced other challenges like ink smudges caused by damp fingers, imperfections in parchment, or faded pigments in illumination. Later generations of monks might return to old manuscripts to restore faded inks or retouch illustrations, preserving these treasures for future readers. Picture a monk pausing mid-page, penknife in hand, carefully scraping away a blot, then smiling quietly as he adds a mischievous creature in the margin. An artist and a craftsman, devoted but human. These glimpses of personality remind us that medieval scribes weren't just austere clerics, but individuals who found moments of joy amid painstaking labor. Correction was more than a technical task. It was part of the monks' spiritual relationship with their work. Each fix was an act of devotion, a small renewal of commitment to preserving truth and beauty. Mistakes became part of the manuscript's life story, traces of human imperfection embraced and corrected with care. So, as you imagine yourself in the flickering candlelight, quill poised, know that errors weren't failures, but invitations to mindfulness and artistry. The manuscript lives through layers of words, colors, corrections, and playful sketches, all woven into a tapestry of faith and perseverance. Next time you find yourself frustrated by a mistake, remember those medieval monks gently scraping ink away, turning correction into creation, and infusing every page with patience, grace, and humanity. You glance around the scriptorium and notice a hierarchy quietly at work, not only in the division of labor, but also in the careful oversight of the manuscripts being produced. The abbot, the monastery's spiritual leader, played a pivotal role in overseeing this entire process. Though his duties spanned far beyond the scriptorium walls, his influence shaped how manuscripts were valued, assigned, and completed. The abbot wasn't just a religious figure, but also an administrator and guardian of the monastery's intellectual output. He ensured that the scribes and illuminators adhered to both the spiritual standards and the practical demands of manuscript production. Under his watchful eye, the scriptorium functioned as a well-ordered workshop, with clear roles and expectations for every monk. Senior scribes, often called calligraphers or masters, supervised novices and less experienced monks. These elders were the most skilled artisans, responsible for setting the example of neat, precise handwriting and impeccable craftsmanship. They reviewed manuscripts for errors, instructed apprentices, and sometimes even chose which texts to copy based on the monastery's priorities. Assignments in the scriptorium were carefully distributed according to skill and experience. Novices might be tasked with copying simpler, less decorated texts or focusing on repetitive sections like psalms. More complex works, especially those requiring elaborate illumination, were reserved for seasoned monks with proven talent. This system ensured both efficiency and quality, while also serving as a form of education within the monastic community. You can imagine the abbot's office lined with shelves of precious manuscripts, each representing countless hours of labor and devotion. The abbot decided which texts were most valuable to copy, be they theological treatises, liturgical guides, or classical works deemed essential for study. His choices shaped the intellectual legacy the monastery would leave behind. Interestingly, some abbots were themselves scholars and skilled scribes, deeply involved in the production process. They might contribute annotations, corrections, or even compose original texts. Others delegated more, but maintained a strong interest in the quality and significance of the scriptorium's output. The division of labor extended beyond the act of copying. There were monks who specialized in illumination, others who prepared ink and parchment, and some who managed the library and the storage of completed manuscripts. This specialization fostered a sense of teamwork, each monk contributing their unique skill to a shared mission. The hierarchical structure wasn't purely practical. It reflected monastic ideals of order and obedience. Each monk understood their role within the community, accepting guidance from superiors as a form of spiritual discipline. The scriptorium was as much a place of learning and mentorship as it was a workshop. You might picture a novice monk nervously presenting his work to a senior scribe, who inspects each letter carefully, offering corrections or praise. This dynamic balanced encouragement with high standards, nurturing skill while maintaining the monastery's reputation for excellence. Historians still discuss how much creative freedom monks had within this hierarchy. While the rule of Saint Benedict emphasized humility and obedience, some evidence suggests that talented scribes and illuminators expressed individuality within their work, adding subtle flourishes or personalized marginalia. The tension between conformity and creativity adds depth to our understanding of medieval manuscript culture. The abbot's influence also extended to the monastery's relations with patrons and other religious institutions. Manuscripts were sometimes commissioned by wealthy nobles or church officials, creating additional pressures for quality and timeliness. You might picture a novice monk nervously presenting his work to a senior scribe who inspects each letter carefully, offering corrections or praise. This dynamic, balanced encouragement with high standards, nurturing skill while maintaining the monastery's reputation for excellence. Historians still discuss how much creative freedom monks had within this hierarchy. While the rule of Saint Benedict emphasized humility and obedience, some evidence suggests that talented scribes and illuminators expressed individuality within their work, adding subtle flourishes or personalized marginalia. The tension between conformity and creativity adds depth to our understanding of medieval manuscript culture. The abbot's influence also extended to the monastery's relations with patrons and other religious institutions. Manuscripts were sometimes commissioned by wealthy nobles or church officials, creating additional pressures for quality and timeliness. You can feel the quiet authority of the abbot as a guiding force in this world. His leadership ensures that the delicate dance of manuscript production continues with reverence, precision, and purpose. Without such governance, the fragile chain linking past knowledge to future generations might have been broken. So, as you imagine the scriptorium's daily workings, remember the abbot's watchful gaze and the layered hierarchy supporting every stroke of the quill. This structure was vital, not only for the survival of texts, but for nurturing the faith, artistry, and community that defined medieval monastic life. You slowly come to understand that your task is far more than mere copying. It is part of an immense and noble mission to safeguard and spread the wealth of human knowledge. The monks who inhabit these quiet monasteries were, in many ways, the earliest publishers. Long before the printing press transformed the landscape of information, these humble scribes and illuminators were responsible for the careful transmission of texts across vast distances and generations. Their manuscripts were precious vessels of culture, traveling far beyond the cloister walls, shaping scholarship, devotion, and governance throughout medieval Europe and beyond. Once a manuscript was completed in the flickering candlelight of the scriptorium, it rarely rested quietly on a shelf. Instead, these painstakingly created volumes embarked on journeys, wrapped in protective cloth, secured within wooden chests, and entrusted to the hands of messengers, pilgrims, or merchants. Picture a delicate book, its vellum pages glowing faintly beneath a soft leather cover, being carried over uneven roads, across rivers, and through bustling market towns, destined for distant abbeys, cathedral libraries, or the private collections of nobles. This movement was no small feat. Traveling with fragile, priceless manuscripts was fraught with peril. Books could be lost to thieves, damaged by rain or fire, or fall victim to neglect. Yet, despite these risks, the monks' relentless dedication ensured the survival and proliferation of countless sacred and secular texts. It was their unyielding commitment that preserved knowledge through times historians often label the Dark Ages, a period marked by turmoil and the fracturing of ancient institutions. Monasteries actively sought to acquire rare and ancient manuscripts, viewing their collection and preservation as a sacred duty. Some monks undertook perilous expeditions, navigating political intrigues and natural hazards to obtain precious works. Imagine a humble monk traveling by mule or foot across unfamiliar terrain, driven by the conviction that every recovered manuscript was a treasure worth any hardship. This quest connected monasteries in an intellectual network spanning continents, bound by the shared goal of cultural preservation and dissemination. Scholars still debate how selective monks were in their preservation efforts. Did they carefully choose only texts that aligned with their theological views and monastic values? Or was their approach more inclusive? This tension reflects the dual role monks played as both transmitters and gatekeepers of knowledge, shaping the intellectual heritage passed down to future generations. As manuscripts journeyed from one monastery to another, they underwent subtle transformations. Regional scribes introduced variations in spelling, stylistic choices, and commentary, leading to a rich tapestry of textual history. Think of each manuscript as a living document, an evolving palimpsest shaped by the hands and minds of countless monks who interacted with it over the centuries. This transmission process contributed to the gradual standardization of texts. Through repeated copying, scribes smoothed out variations, corrected errors, and added glosses, explanatory notes written in margins, to clarify complex passages for later readers. These glosses turned manuscripts into vibrant tools for learning, not just vessels of sacred word. Physical manuscripts were also potent symbols of wealth, learning, and piety. Nobles, university scholars, and ecclesiastical leaders prized illuminated books as both spiritual artifacts and status symbols. Commissioning a manuscript was a meaningful act, reflecting one's devotion and social standing. Through such patronage, monasteries became entwined with broader social and political networks, extending their influence beyond spiritual domains. Monks' work did more than preserve religion and philosophy. It nurtured the continuity of classical knowledge, literature, science, medicine, that might otherwise have been lost amid medieval upheavals. Imagine the miracle of surviving texts by Aristotle, Cicero, or Galen, carried on by the patient hands of monastic scribes. Now picture yourself preparing a manuscript for its journey beyond the monastery. Wrapped tenderly in linen, secured within a wooden chest, and handed to a traveler bound for a distant abbey, you experience a mixture of hope and solemn responsibility. You know this fragile bundle carries the intellectual and spiritual legacy of centuries, words that will inspire, instruct, and comfort generations to come. As you envision the manuscript traveling through winding roads, river crossings, and foreign markets, recall the monks' unwavering devotion. They were not just scribes, but custodians of human wisdom, their work bridging past and future, faith and reason, art and science. So as you hold this vision in your mind's eye, appreciate the monks' crucial role as early publishers. Their quiet dedication preserved the flame of knowledge and ensured that even in the darkest times, the light of learning continued to shine. The question quietly lingers as you continue your work. Who truly authored these manuscripts? Were the monks simply copying machines, obediently transcribing texts without change? Or did they leave their own subtle imprint, perhaps even a touch of creativity on each page? This debate among historians is ongoing, and as you delve deeper, you realize the answer isn't as straightforward as it seems. On one hand, the monks were bound by a strict code of humility and obedience. Their mission was to faithfully preserve the sacred and classical texts passed down through centuries. Accuracy was critical, especially with religious manuscripts, where even a minor error could alter the meaning or be considered disrespectful. The rule of Saint Benedict emphasized submission and discouraged any act that might call attention to the individual scribe. This mindset suggests that monks viewed themselves as custodians rather than creators, their role to replicate rather than innovate. Yet, when you examine surviving manuscripts closely, a different picture emerges. Each monk's handwriting carries a unique character. Some letters flow gracefully, others are crisp and angular. Some manuscripts display subtle flourishes or distinct styles that distinguish one scribe from another. Marginalia, notes, sketches, and sometimes playful doodles reveal the personalities hiding behind the pious facades. These personal touches suggest monks were more than mere copyists. They were individuals bringing their own spirit into the work. Beyond handwriting, there is the matter of textual variation. Some scribes included glosses, explanations, or interpretive notes alongside the main text. These annotations could reflect personal theological views or scholarly debates of the time. Occasionally, scribes corrected or even altered phrases, whether to clarify meaning or align the text with contemporary beliefs. This indicates a degree of editorial input, blurring the line between faithful copying and creative contribution. Artistic decisions also demonstrate a form of authorship. The choice of illumination styles, the inclusion of particular motifs or symbols, and the way pages were decorated varied widely. While often following local or traditional patterns, these choices allowed individual artists to leave a distinct mark. The playfulness of marginalia, little animals, caricatures, or humorous scenes further reveals the monks' willingness to express personality within their devotional work. Historians debate whether these differences amount to true authorship or are simply natural variations of hand copying over time. Did the monks see themselves as creators or as humble servants of the text? The answer is likely nuanced. In some monasteries, artistic freedom was encouraged within limits, while in others, strict conformity was demanded. This tension adds richness and depth to the manuscripts, making each one a unique artifact shaped by both tradition and individual hands. Moreover, the selection of texts to be copied and the ways in which they were organized reflect choices made by the monastic community or its leaders. These decisions shaped the intellectual and spiritual legacy the monastery wished to cultivate, making the author more collective than singular. The monks, abbots, and patrons formed a network of influences that guided the production of manuscripts. Beyond copying, some monks were also original authors, composing prayers, sermons, or theological treatises. These works show the creative and intellectual vitality present within monastic life. Manuscripts thus encompass a spectrum, from faithful reproduction to original composition, reflecting a living tradition of scholarship and devotion. As you reflect on this, you appreciate the complexity of medieval authorship. The manuscripts stand as testaments not only to the words they contain, but also to the human effort, creativity, and faith behind them. The monks were both preservers and creators, their work bridging the gap between past wisdom and future generations. You sense the humility and devotion that guided their hands, balanced with the subtle pride and artistry visible in flourishes and sketches. Each manuscript becomes a living dialogue between tradition and innovation, obedience and expression, sacred duty and personal touch. This understanding deepens your connection to the scriptorium, transforming it from the mere copying room into a vibrant space of intellectual and spiritual engagement. You realize that behind every page is a story, not just of ancient knowledge, but of the monks who crafted it, their struggles, their faith, and their humanity. So as you continue your silent labor, remember that you're part of a lineage that is at once humble and creative, a sacred transmission of wisdom carried forward by hands guided by both devotion and individuality. You begin to notice the subtle fingerprints of regional identity in the manuscripts surrounding you. Distinct styles and scripts that weave together the rich cultural tapestry of medieval Europe. From the intricate Celtic knots and elaborate interlacing of Irish and Scottish monasteries to the clear, rounded Carolingian minuscule favored in the Frankish territories. Each region brought its own unique artistic traditions and preferences to the sacred craft of manuscript creation. In the monasteries of Ireland and Scotland, monks developed what we now call insular script. This style is characterized by dense, ornate lettering coupled with astonishingly detailed decorations that transform pages into visual masterpieces. Imagine opening a page from the Book of Kells, where vibrant colors, swirling patterns, and stylized animals dance seamlessly throughout the text. These intricate embellishments were not merely decorative, but served as spiritual symbols. Every knot, spiral, and creature was imbued with deeper theological meaning, transforming the manuscript itself into a form of prayer and meditation. Moving southward to continental Europe, the Carolingian Renaissance ushered in a new era of standardization and clarity with the development of Carolingian minuscule. Championed by Charlemagne and his court, this script was designed to be more legible and uniform than previous styles, facilitating the easier copying and dissemination of texts across his empire. With its balanced, rounded letters and generous spacing, Carolingian minuscule represented not just an aesthetic choice, but a deliberate intellectual and administrative innovation aimed at preserving and spreading knowledge. You can almost feel the shift in atmosphere from the densely ornamented Celtic pages to the open, orderly layouts favored by the Carolingians, a reflection of changing priorities and influences. As you examine manuscripts from different regions, you sense how each style tells a story of local pride, historical context, and evolving religious expression. The curves of letters, the choice of motifs, and even the color palettes all echo the environment and culture of their creators. These styles were influenced not only by religious tradition, but also by local materials, climate, and the availability of pigments. Historians continue to debate the extent of interaction and influence among these regional styles. Trade routes, pilgrimages, and scholarly exchanges likely facilitated a cross-pollination of artistic ideas, resulting in hybrid manuscripts that blend Celtic complexity with continental orderliness or incorporate Byzantine richness. You might picture monks traveling long distances, sharing techniques and inspiration, enriching the manuscript tradition with every encounter. Practical considerations also shape these scripts and illuminations. For example, some regions favored more compact writing to conserve expensive parchment, while others embraced spacious layouts for improved readability and aesthetic effect. the availability and cost of pigments influenced the richness and brightness of manuscript decorations. Gold leaf might be lavishly applied in wealthier monasteries, while others made do with simpler color schemes. It's fascinating to discover that some scribes personalized their handwriting by incorporating local alphabets or unique letter forms, making their manuscripts distinct signatures of their place and identity. These subtle variations are invaluable to modern scholars attempting to trace the origins and movement of medieval texts. A particular flourish or stylistic choice can reveal a manuscript's birthplace centuries after it was created. Beyond the monasteries, the influence of these regional styles extended to royal courts and emerging universities. Nobles commissioned illuminated manuscripts that reflected their tastes and political ambitions, further diversifying the artistic landscape. Such manuscripts became cultural ambassadors, symbols of power and piety that connected local traditions to wider European currents. This regional diversity in manuscript production illustrates the vibrancy and complexity of medieval Europe's cultural mosaic. Despite political fragmentation, geographic barriers, and intermittent conflict, monasteries maintained a lively network of intellectual and artistic exchange. The manuscripts they produced were both universal expressions of faith and particular reflections of local identity. As you imagine yourself turning the pages of these varied manuscripts, you travel across time and place, from the misty, rugged coasts of Ireland to the grand illuminated halls of Charlemagne's court, witnessing the unfolding of artistic and spiritual heritage across medieval Europe. So, the next time you see an ornate initial, an elaborate border, or a swirling pattern in an old book, remember it as more than decoration. It's a fingerprint, a beautiful, living trace of a particular monastery, region, or era, preserving a piece of the medieval world's rich cultural and spiritual life. You lean in closer, captivated by the shimmer of gold that seems to leap off the pages before you. This is the magic of gold leaf, the crowning jewel of medieval manuscript illumination. The use of gold leaf was far more than mere decoration. It was a deliberate, sacred act intended to infuse the manuscripts with a sense of divine radiance, making the text itself a physical manifestation of heavenly light. The process of applying gold leaf was painstaking and required extraordinary skill. It began with the preparation of a special adhesive base called gesso or bole, typically made from a mixture of gypsum, clay, and animal glue. This sticky layer was carefully applied to the area destined to be gilded, often raised slightly to catch the light and give the gold a subtle three-dimensional effect. Once the base dried to the perfect tackiness, the gold leaf, extremely thin sheets of pure gold, thinner than paper, was gently laid on top. Handling these fragile sheets was a delicate task. A careless breath or a slight tremor could tear or wrinkle them. After placement, the gold was burnished with smooth tools, sometimes polished stones, ivory, or even dog's teeth, to enhance its reflective quality and achieve a brilliant shine. This burnishing was the final step that transformed the gold leaf from a flat surface into a glowing, almost magical illumination. You can almost imagine the reverence with which monks performed this part of the process, their hands steady despite the preciousness of the material. Gold leaf wasn't just chosen for its beauty, it carried deep symbolic meaning. In medieval Christian thought, gold was closely associated with the divine, representing the unchanging light of heaven and the eternal presence of God. Gilded manuscripts were therefore not only aesthetic masterpieces, but spiritual objects designed to elevate the reader's mind toward the sacred. The sparkling gold caught the flickering candlelight in ways that seemed almost miraculous, casting a warm glow that brought the text to life. The cost of gold leaf was significant. Procuring it required resources and connections. Monasteries often received gold as donations from wealthy patrons or recycled scraps from older manuscripts. This precious metal was usually reserved for the most important texts, special chapters, or illustrations of holy figures, such as Christ, the Virgin Mary, or saints. The lavish use of gold underscored the manuscript's value and the sacred importance of its contents. Despite the grandeur of gilding, the technique was fraught with challenges. The parchment had to be perfectly prepared, and the gesso base carefully applied and dried to the right consistency. If too wet, the gold leaf wouldn't stick. If too dry, it would flake off. Mistakes during application could ruin hours or even days of work, requiring patience and an artist's steady hand. Monks spent years perfecting this craft, learning how to manipulate materials with care and reverence. Interestingly, the gold leaf used in manuscripts wasn't always pure gold. Some pieces were alloyed with other metals to improve durability or create varied hues. Occasionally, silver or other metals were used, but these tended to tarnish over time, losing their brilliance and leaving a dull surface. That's why surviving manuscripts with gleaming gold leaf are especially precious. They carry the glow of a long-lost world. The application of gold leaf also influenced other medieval art forms. The radiance and symbolism of gilded manuscripts found echoes in stained glass windows, illuminated altarpieces, and even the ornate decoration of churches and cathedrals. Manuscripts set a high bar for sacred art, inspiring generations of artists and craftsmen beyond the monastery walls. Historians continue to debate the multiple purposes gold leaf served in manuscripts. Some suggest it was primarily a visual guide, helping readers navigate complex texts by highlighting important passages or chapter headings. Others emphasize its devotional role, transforming the book itself into an object of worship and contemplation. Regardless of the intent, the presence of gold elevated manuscripts from mere books to treasured relics. Imagine gently turning a gilded page, feeling the delicate ridges where gold leaf meets parchment, watching the light dance across the shimmering surface. The effect is both earthly and ethereal, a tangible connection between human craftsmanship and divine inspiration. Beyond technique and symbolism, the use of gold leaf was a testament to the monks' dedication and the monastery's resources. Only the most prosperous or well-connected religious houses could afford such luxury, making gilded manuscripts symbols of prestige and piety. In some cases, the gold leaf served as a narrative device, drawing attention to key theological points or sacred moments within the text. Illuminated initials adorned with gold could signal the start of a new chapter or an important passage, guiding the reader's eye and heart. The glow of gold was also a spiritual reminder in times of darkness and uncertainty. In candlelit chambers, these glowing pages provided hope and a sense of heavenly presence, a light shining in the shadows, both literally and metaphorically. So as you sit with these illuminated manuscripts in your mind, remember the painstaking craft, the symbolism, and the faith behind every gilded flourish. Each golden leaf is more than metal. It is a prayer, a labor of love, and a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Next time you see a glimmer of gold in art or design, think back to those medieval monks who transformed humble pages into radiant reflections of heaven itself, preserving their light for all who would come after. As you study the delicate manuscripts before you, your gaze naturally drifts toward the margins. Those narrow bands of parchment that frame the text, often dismissed as empty space. Yet these edges conceal a world brimming with life, imagination, and even mischief. The margins of medieval manuscripts are a veritable treasure trove of hidden drawings, cryptic notes, whimsical creatures, and occasionally biting commentary. Quiet whispers from the monks who crafted these works, revealing their personalities and humor amid the solemnity of their task. Picture a tiny monkey clad in a monk's cowl, mischievously peering out from the corner of a page, or a knight locked in a comically uneven battle with a giant snail, a common humorous motif of the time. You might also find fantastical beasts, hybrids of birds, fish, and men, entwined in elaborate knotwork or lurking near scriptural passages. These playful images might seem incongruous alongside sacred scripture, but they speak volumes about the monks' human need to lighten the weight of their repetitive and demanding work. The margins became a sanctuary for creativity, a space to inject humor and personality into otherwise austere pages. The collective term for these drawings and notes, marginalia, encompasses a wide range of artistic and textual expressions. Many of these illustrations carry deep symbolic meanings. Grotesque creatures guarding the edges of pages often represented spiritual battles between good and evil, or symbolized vices to be overcome. Floral motifs might signify purity or resurrection. Some images were designed to provoke thought or reflection, inviting readers to engage not only intellectually, but also visually and spiritually with the text. Scholars today still puzzle over the exact meanings of many marginal motifs, suspecting some were intended only for the initiated monks themselves. Marginalia also served as a vehicle for personal expression and even subtle social commentary. Within these spaces, monks sometimes inserted caricatures of abbots, fellow monks, or patrons, expressing frustration, humor, or critique disguised beneath whimsical imagery. In a monastic culture that valued obedience and silence, these covert doodles and annotations offered a rare outlet for individuality and dissent. You can imagine a scribe slyly sketching a stern superior's grimace or depicting a humorous scene that gently mocks the monotony or strictness of monastic life. While some abbots tolerated or even encouraged marginalia as a harmless creative outlet, others regarded them as distractions or even irreverent acts. Despite occasional censure, the tradition thrived, a testament to the monks' resilience and their enduring human spirit. These sketches infuse the manuscripts with warmth and personality, reminding us that the creators were not merely austere clerics, but people with quirks, humor, and emotions. You might be surprised to encounter some of the more bizarre marginalia, naked figures engaged in comic or absurd antics, animals performing human activities, or cryptic visual puzzles and playful word games. Such imagery defies modern assumptions of medieval solemnity, revealing a nuanced culture where reverence and playfulness coexisted harmoniously. Beyond whimsy, marginalia often held practical functions. Scribes and later readers added corrections, explanatory glosses, or scholarly commentary in the margins, offering valuable insights into the interpretive practices and evolving understanding of the texts. These notes reveal manuscripts as living documents, shaped by ongoing study and dialogue across generations. Artistically, the margins became spaces for experimentation and storytelling. Some manuscripts feature sequential images or narrative vignettes that weave through the borders, illustrating biblical stories, saints' lives, or moral lessons. This integration of text and image created a rich, immersive reading experience, engaging multiple senses and inviting contemplation beyond words alone. Marginalia provide a rare and precious window into the daily lives, thoughts, and personalities of medieval monks, voices absent from official histories or theological treatises. Through these playful drawings and notes, monks speak across centuries, revealing their humanity and creativity amid devotion and discipline. So next time you gaze upon an illuminated manuscript, don't just focus on the central text or the grand initials. Lean closer and explore the margins. Within these slender frames lie hidden stories, secret jokes, and the subtle smiles of scribes long gone. These small acts of artistic rebellion breathe life into the quiet halls of history, transforming static pages into vibrant conversations between past and present. In this rich interplay of word and image, the monks continue to communicate through ink, through brush, and through the charming creatures and cryptic symbols that guard their sacred writings, inviting you to join their timeless dialogue. As you pull back from the intricate artistry of illuminated manuscripts and the personal stories hidden in their margins, you begin to see the bigger picture, the vital role of the medieval scriptorium as a center of learning and cultural preservation. These quiet rooms were not merely places where texts were copied. They were intellectual hubs where knowledge was protected, nurtured, and transmitted in an era when much of Europe's classical heritage teetered on the edge of oblivion. Monastic libraries, growing hand in hand with scriptoria, housed vast collections of texts, including sacred scriptures, theological treatises, classical philosophy, histories, scientific writings, and medical manuals. These libraries were sanctuaries of wisdom, vital repositories of humanity's accumulated knowledge. Imagine rows upon rows of shelves or chests crammed with scrolls and codices, their aged parchment pages imbued with centuries of thought. The air thick with the scents of vellum, ink, and lingering candle smoke. But the monks were not passive custodians of these texts. Many of them were active scholars, deeply engaging with the material they copied. They studied, annotated, debated, and sometimes translated works from Greek, Latin, or other languages. Through this labor, they became instrumental in preserving and shaping the intellectual landscape of medieval Europe. Their careful transcription preserved the wisdom of ancient authors such as Aristotle, Galen, and Cicero, texts that might otherwise have been lost during times of political turmoil and social upheaval. Some monasteries became renowned centers of scholarship, attracting students and clerics from far and wide. These places functioned as early universities of sorts, where knowledge was exchanged and intellectual networks flourished. Imagine a young student traveling great distances, arriving at a monastery famed for its collection of manuscripts, eager to study the texts and learn from experienced monks. This flow of ideas helped knit together a Europe that was politically fragmented but intellectually connected. The manuscripts produced and preserved in the scriptorium were central to education. They were used in teaching theology, canon law, philosophy, and the liberal arts. The preservation and dissemination of these works contributed directly to the rise of universities in the High Middle Ages, which became vital engines of learning and cultural transmission. You can picture a monk reading aloud from a manuscript to attentive students gathered around, breathing life into texts that span centuries and continents. Yet, despite their monumental contribution, the scribes and scholars of the monasteries often remained anonymous. Individual names were rarely recorded, the labor attributed instead to the collective monastic community or considered a humble offering to God. This anonymity, a reflection of monastic humility, means that many personal stories and contributions have been lost to history, concealed beneath layers of ink, parchment, and silence. Modern historians still debate the precise impact of monastic scriptoria on the preservation of classical knowledge. Some argue that monasteries served as the last bastions of learning during the so-called Dark Ages, preventing the total loss of ancient wisdom. Others emphasize the dynamic nature of medieval intellectual life, highlighting how monasteries were centers of innovation as well as conservation. Regardless, the evidence is clear. Without the painstaking work of monks, much of Western intellectual heritage, philosophy, science, literature, might have been irretrievably lost. As you imagine the quiet dedication of these scribes and scholars, a profound sense of gratitude arises. Their work was a bridge across the chasms of time, a flickering beacon of knowledge in periods of uncertainty and change. They labored not for fame or fortune, but for the love of learning, the devotion to faith, and the hope that future generations might walk in their footsteps. Beyond the manuscripts themselves, These monasteries fostered a vibrant culture of scholarship and spiritual reflection. The scriptorium was often intertwined with the monastery's other activities: gardening, worship, teaching, creating a holistic environment where the mind, body, and spirit were nurtured in harmony. You can almost hear the echo of monks' footsteps in vaulted corridors, the murmur of prayers mingling with whispered scholarly debates, the rustle of parchment as manuscripts are consulted and copied. It's a world of quiet resolve, where the passage of time is marked not by clocks, but by the slow, steady turning of pages and the meticulous shaping of letters. This vision invites you to appreciate the monasteries, not just as secluded places of piety, but as vibrant intellectual centers, places where human curiosity and devotion converged to preserve and cultivate the flame of knowledge. The manuscripts, with their gilded pages and lively marginalia, are the tangible legacy of this noble pursuit. So, as you prepare to close this chapter of your journey through the medieval scriptorium, carry with you the understanding that behind every illuminated page lies centuries of faith, scholarship, and perseverance. The monk's hands, guided by devotion and artistry, crafted a bridge from the ancient world to ours, a bridge that continues to inspire and enlighten. In the gentle glow of candlelight, amid the scent of parchment and ink, the spirit of medieval scholarship lives on, inviting you to partake in its timeless quest for wisdom and truth. As your time in the medieval scriptorium draws to a close, you find yourself enveloped in a peaceful quietness that seems to stretch beyond the stone walls. The flickering candlelight bathes the room in a warm, golden glow, softening every surface and casting gentle shadows that dance lazily on parchment and wood alike. Here in this timeless space, the boundaries between work, prayer, and reflection dissolve, creating an atmosphere where every stroke of the quill feels like a sacred act, and every page illuminated becomes a hymn of light. You recall the simple yet profound tools that formed the essence of the monk's craft: goose feathers painstakingly trimmed into quills, ink made from soot and oak galls, and parchment created from carefully prepared animal skins. These humble materials, when combined with human patience and devotion, were transformed into vessels of knowledge and beauty that would endure across centuries. Each letter formed, each color blended, and each sheet of gold leaf applied carried with it the silent prayers and intentions of the scribes. There is a weight to this labor, both literal and spiritual. You sense the immense responsibility resting on every monk's shoulders as they labored for hours, eyes fixed on their delicate work, aware that their manuscripts were more than just books. They were lifelines, bridges connecting past wisdom to future generations, sacred objects inspiring faith, and testaments to human perseverance and artistry. As you glance toward the margins, you are reminded of the playful humanity hidden within these holy texts. The curious creatures, witty caricatures, and mischievous sketches reveal moments of levity and personal expression that offer a glimpse of the monk's spirits. These marginalia speak of lives filled not only with discipline, but also with humor and individuality, softening the solemnity of the sacred task and reminding us that the creators behind the manuscripts were as human as the readers who would someday marvel at their work. The rhythm of monastic life pulses quietly in your mind. The rise and fall of prayers sung in the chapel, the measured hours devoted to copying and illumination, the brief respites for meals and silent contemplation. Time here is not marked by ticking clocks, but by the cadence of devotion and labor, weaving a tapestry of order and sanctity that governed every moment. You imagine the distant toll of bells summoning the monks to their next ritual or meal, the soft shuffle of footsteps on stone, and the whispered chants that echo through ancient halls, connecting past and present. Outside these walls, the manuscripts you helped bring to life will journey across continents, carried by pilgrims, traders, and scholars. Wrapped in cloth and secured within wooden chests, they will pass through castle libraries, cathedral schools, and the hands of curious minds eager for knowledge. You feel the quiet pride of knowing that your meticulous work is part of this vast transmission of culture and learning, a thread woven into the fabric of history that stretches through time. In these moments of reflection, you understand the profound humility of the monks who created these manuscripts. Their names may never be known, their faces hidden in the shadows of history, but their legacy is indelible. Through their dedication, faith, and artistry, they preserve the light of knowledge during times when darkness threatened to engulf it. Each manuscript is a silent witness to their devotion, a treasure carrying their spirit forward through the ages. As the candle flickers low and the evening deepens, a soothing calm settles over you. The world outside grows quiet, and your mind slows, carried gently on the soft rhythms of this sacred place. You feel yourself drifting toward rest, cradled by the glow of candlelight and the steady heartbeat of centuries-old devotion. Remember, the monk's work is not merely history. It is a living legacy, a testament to the enduring power of faith, art, and human perseverance. Their hands shaped more than parchment. They shaped the course of knowledge and culture for generations to come. Now, as you prepare to close your eyes and surrender to sleep, carry with you the quiet strength of the scriptorium, the whispered prayers woven into every letter, and the shimmering light of gold leaf that still shines across the centuries. Rest well, knowing you have walked in the footsteps of those who kept the flame of wisdom burning bright through the dark and fragile nights of history. Sweet dreams.